Greetings from Colorado Springs, Colorado. This is the home of the United States Air Force Academy. And this is its first graduating class, the class of '59. Leaders of tomorrow graduate. As they do, this Air Academy takes its place beside Annapolis and West Point, and the fondest dream of every American airman comes true. This academy, fashioned in aluminum, steel, and glass, is entirely different from her sister schools.
It's magnificent, yet many claim that an institution to be great must be steeped in tradition that comes only with age. Some of its buildings are still not finished. It's a new school, and its newness is reflected in gleaming glass, marble, and aluminum everywhere you look. At Annapolis, midshipmen traditionally throw pennies at the statue of their revered Tecumseh. This very flag grew from the mast of Admiral Perry's ship. High over the Hudson stands West Point. Its buildings stand today just as they did generations ago, when some of our country's greatest leaders were underclassmen.
Well, the Air Force Academy is too new. It has none of these things, but it has tradition. Well, we're devoting our entire show to this request from John King of Hempstead, New York. And he wants to know where that tradition came from, how and when it began. Let's go back to the Civil War, 2 decades before this first plane was born.
In the great conflict between the North and the South, the Union Army used balloons for aerial observation almost from the beginning. On December 17, 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright won a race that had been going on quietly for the preceding decade. Distinguished scientists in Britain, Germany, and France had been trying to build a successful flying machine. For that windy day on the sands of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, the Wright brothers succeeded. They built their own 12-horsepower engine. Theirs was a remarkable achievement, undoubtedly the last of such magnitude to come from what amounted to a home workshop. By 1908, the Wrights had developed a really practical plane. The War Department called for bids on an aircraft that could carry 2 people 125 miles at a speed of at least 40 miles per hour. The Wright brothers' plane was delivered for $25,000, and with that one plane, the United States Army Air Force was born. In 1911, a young second lieutenant earned his airman's wings. He was destined to become the future commander of the AAF and lead 2.5 million airmen to victory in World War II. His name? Hap Arnold.
Tradition has many sources. Not all of them come from men and their deeds of the past, though certainly there's a rich legacy in early airmen. Well, in just 1 minute, we'll see some traditions in the making here at this new academy.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. You know, that saying's about 400 years old. And like most 400-year-old sayings, it's still true. Well, now, the Skippy folks don't make pudding. They make Skippy peanut butter. But the only way that you can prove to yourself whether you like Skippy is to taste it. It's that simple. Why, you could listen to me ranting and raving on 563 commercials, but you still wouldn't know for sure whether or not you like Skippy. The only way that you can tell is to eat it. Now, I don't care where you get your first taste of Skippy. You may have a jar in the house now. Maybe you can borrow some from one of your neighbors. Or you might even buy a jar, which is the method that my sponsor heartily recommends. But the important thing is for you to try Skippy. And then you'll know why I say that Skippy doesn't taste like peanut butter. Skippy and Skippy alone taste exactly like fresh roasted peanuts. That's because Skippy is made from U.S.-grade #1 peanuts by an exclusive patented process. So whether or not you ordinarily like peanut butter, if you like peanuts, you'll like Skippy. Skippy peanut butter.
This is the class ring of the Air Force Academy, worn proudly by the graduating class. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Young men like that who come here from every corner of the United States. Eventually, there'll be 2,500 here in regular attendance. Right now, there are just 4 small classes, the pioneers of the academy. Theirs is a unique responsibility. Not only must they become highly polished gentlemen and widely educated officers, apart from that, their every act, every expression, every nickname they use, every custom they bring about could very well be this Academy's traditions for years to come. Perhaps forever.
Cadet athletic teams are called the Falcons. The name comes from their mascot, the noble bird selected to represent the Academy by the class of '59. Falcons are known for their swiftness of flight, their courage, and their ferocity. The Falcon is an ideal mascot, and with the passing of time will grow into a fine tradition. Already the birds have been used to provide half-time entertainment at football games. The officers and men of the Air Training Command passed the hat and then commissioned sculptor Carl Mose to do this statue for the school. Eventually, it will have a nickname or some ritual will surround it. But no one here is rushing the formation of traditions, and this statue is a good case in point. This cadet created a tradition without even thinking about it. His name is Brock Strong. He played tackle on the Falcons football team. Last year, he was named All-American, the first All-American from this Academy. Brock and the rest of the high-flying Falcons set another tradition New Year's Day this year. The very first time the Air Force Academy gained a senior class, their football team played in a postseason bowl game. The procedures followed to the letter at meals is already traditional.
Give me your altitude. Sir, my altitude is 7,182 feet and far, far above that of West Point or Annapolis. Very good. Carry on. Wilson, let's hear a VFR position report.
Yes, sir. Visual flight roll position report is. Denver radio, Air Force Jet 50163, Denver 32. Visual flight roll to Salt Lake City. Over, sir.
Carry on, Wilson.
Mr. Smith, give me the mission of the United States Air Force.
Sir, the mission of the United States Air Force is to organize, train, and equip Air Force forces for the conduct of sustained combat operations in the air, sir.
When a cadet becomes an upperclassman, he's granted certain liberties. One of these is the privilege of decorating his bathrobe. Regular ceremonies are held, and cadets are given awards in mock seriousness. The first young man is decorated for receiving the most Dear John letters in 1 week. Those are letters from girlfriends breaking off their relationship. The second man receives a Navy emblem symbolic of the Century Club, a select group of unfortunates who've had to walk 100 tours to eliminate demerits. Walking tours is one tradition Annapolis, West Point, and the Air Force Academy all have in common.
A couple of generations from now, these cadet uniforms will have evolved into a symbol of tradition in their own right. They were designed by a civilian who volunteered his services. His name, C.B. DeMille.
Flirtation Walk at West Point and Cathedral Rock here are traditionally the same. Keeping up grades is a must tradition, otherwise a cadet will flunk out. The Academy doesn't offer a major field of study, but rather seeks to give its graduates the broadest possible education within the principal areas of learning: the humanities, the social sciences, and the physical sciences.
Our chemistry lesson this morning is concerned with rocket propulsion.
Much of our modern stage terminology had its origins here in Shakespeare's Globe Theater.
An object can be portrayed on paper by either orthographic projection or by three-dimensional pictorial representation. These hand calculators will help you considerably in solving your statistical problems. Now let's try the problem on the board. In the air age, the space factor is conditioned by time.
Chemical reactions liberate energy in many forms.
A full schedule, but an upperclassman is never too busy to keep a dually straight and level.
Mr. Lightsey?
Yes, sir.
Why didn't you square that corner?
No excuse, sir.
Haven't I spoken to you about that before?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lightsey, don't you have any self-discipline at all?
Yes, sir.
Who was America's commander of the Air Forces during World War I?
Sir, during World War I, the commander of America's Air Forces was General William Mitchell.
Who was America's leading war ace during World War I? Sir, during World War I, America's leading war ace was Eddie Rickenbacker.
How many kills did he have, Mr. Lightsey?
Sir, he had 25 kills.
Eddie Rickenbacker, commander of the famous Hat in the Ring Squadron. Captain Field Kentley, 12 kills. Major Raoul Lufberry knocked down 17 before he and Kentley were grounded forever. Among those who lived to fight in other wars were Captain Elliott Springs, 12 enemy planes to his credit. Every man who flew and fought in the first great conflict added a chapter to Air Force tradition. They proudly patched their bullet holes with iron crosses. At the beginning of the war, the United States was 14th in air power. Germany ruled the skies over Europe. In 1918, in the Marne-Champagne battle, the Huns used mass air power for the first time. 300 planes seized control of the air and attacked Allied ground forces unmercifully. But it wasn't long before American resources tipped the scales in our favor. As the Allied forces prepared for the Battle of San Miguel, for the first time we felt we would be meeting the Germans on an equal basis, and we had the element of surprise on our side. Every Allied field put planes in the air. Out of a possible 1,500 aircraft, 1,481 went into the skies to fight. Our attack completely surprised the enemy. The American and French forces held an overwhelming superiority. The best the stunned Germans could muster against our huge striking force was an estimated 295 planes, but they reacted quickly. While crack fighter units moved in from other points along the front, German bombers tried to stop our advancing ground troops. Some of the best German fighter units joined in the battle, and vicious dogfights occurred in the skies above no man's land. But Allied pilots had captured the offensive, and they held control of the sky over San Miguel. By November 11th, 1918, when armistice sounded around the world, the men who rocked the cradle of flight had proven beyond a doubt the necessity of air power. In their post-war struggle for recognition, the Air Force pioneered our air mail service. For the benefit of the Red Cross, President Wilson had addressed a letter to the postmaster of New York City. Lack of instruments and navigational maps made flying tough. This first airmail pilot got lost less than 22 miles from Washington. Later, the mail was delivered by another Army pilot who followed the railroad tracks to New York. But in those days, the ones who most often captured the public eye were the war-trained pilots who took up barnstorming. With a $50 surplus trainer and a complete disregard for the laws of gravity, they worked high in the sky, and America watched breathlessly. To daredevil flyers like Howard Hawks, Colonel Roscoe Turner, and Stinson goes much credit. They made America look up for their deeds of courage.
Here's a man whose deeds are legend, General Billy Mitchell. Now, if you had to cite the most outstanding thing that Billy Mitchell did in his colorful career, you'd have to refer back to 1921. That was the year that he put the T in Air Force tradition.
Mitchell talked air power everywhere he went. He insisted that an airplane could sink a battleship. He argued with such conviction that finally Congress decided he should get a chance to prove it. For the test, Billy Mitchell hastily assembled a force and trained them at Langley Field, Virginia. Wooden propellers bit into the air, and the 1st Air Brigade prepared to take off for a mission which was to test the future of military aviation. The target was the captured German battleship Ostfriesland. Pursuits and heavy bombers took to the sky to destroy a heavily armored fighting ship which had been called unsinkable. General Mitchell's air power versus sea power tests were a brilliant success. It's true, of course, the target was a sitting duck, motionless, unarmed, and unmanned. But even while the Navy was discounting the ability of planes to destroy ships able to maneuver and fight back, it took the lesson to heart and began developing its own air power. In the next 2 years, planes were tested against submarines, destroyers, cruisers, and 2 of our obsolete battleships, the Alabama and the New Jersey. They sunk them all. Early in World War II, a B-17 Flying Fortress with a young captain in control sighted a Japanese cruiser and sank sane. The cruiser maneuvered and fought back, but she went down anyway. Billy Mitchell would have been proud of that pilot. His name was Colin Kelly.
Well, not all traditions are born in wars. In the peacetime year of 1929, Major Spots and Captain Aker contributed on the plane aptly named the Question Mark.
In search of greater flying range, they experimented in mid-air refueling. The idea was as simple as tapping a beer barrel at 70 miles per hour. Contact was made 43 times in order to transfer 40 tons of fuel, food, and supplies. The Question Mark stayed in the air for nearly a week, flying 11,000 miles without stopping and breaking every endurance record known. In 1929, Spots and Aker proved our planes could cover half the globe. Today, using the same technique, planes like our B-52 can reach anywhere on Earth.
Another tradition of the Air Force is to use weapons of war for errands of mercy.
The vicious winter of 1932 was a man-killer. Our Curtiss Condor bombers were called on to drop supplies to snowbound Navajos starving in Arizona. Cruising along at 130 miles per hour, our big bombers made the mercy drop, saving hundreds of lives. At the same time, in Ethiopia, the Italians were dropping bombs. Aggression exploded in Manchuria. The Empire of Japan launched an unwarranted attack on its neighbor. When Hitler and the Nazi Party seized absolute control of Germany, the Second World War was just a blitzkrieg away. Many of these kids died because of their blind faith in a maniac. Hitler's Superman devoured Austria and then gobbled up Poland. Goering's Luftwaffe played no favorites. They bombed and strafed soldiers and civilians alike. There was to be no peace in our time. The flames of war swept out of Poland and all over the face of Europe. Dunkirk was England's darkest hour. The Germans had control of the skies. America's darkest hour came shortly after, on December 7th, 1941.
Ingenuity is a tradition of the American Airmen. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, Colonel Jimmy Doolittle proved that conclusively.
The plan was a daring one, to launch B-25 bombers from the pitching deck of the carrier Hornet and strike at Tokyo from the sea. It had never been done before. The 16 bombers crowded the deck and left only 467 feet clear for takeoff. Colonel Doolittle led the way, and the others followed. Their targets were tank factories, munition dumps, and shipyards. These men gave Japan its first taste of the bitterness of war. The Doolittle raid was but an omen of the destruction that would be heaped on Japan. Thousands of men and hundreds of planes were to eventually fulfill Jimmy Doolittle's 1942 promise when he said, "We're going back to Japan in full array and with mighty allies." England, August 17, 1943. 1 year after American planes started daylight precision bombing, our flying privates, sergeants, and generals were putting their lives on the line for the deepest raid ever into Germany. 2,300 men and 376 flying fortresses were paying a visit to the ball bearing plants at Schweinfurt. As soon as they formed over England, German radar across the channel pinpointed them in space. Luftwaffe experts accurately plotted their course, altitude, and speed, and promptly informed their fighter control. At dozens of Nazi airfields, from Denmark to Paris, German fighter units sent up everything they had. Their order was to intercept and destroy. Waves of opposition screamed off the map of Europe. Up to now, our bombers had never been turned back, but up to now, we'd never gone 500 miles into the heart of Germany.
There's 4 of them, 1 o'clock high.
They're coming around. Watch it.
Too fat is 6 o'clock up, coming in, diving out, Chief. He says he's in trouble out at 2 o'clock, watch it.
Got an engine on fire. There's 2 more diving through the 94th.
3 planes, 9 o'clock, coming around. Keep your eye on them, boys.
Around the 10th. Watch it, Chuck, keep your eyes open.
They're breaking in left. 11. Breaking at 11. I got him.
Coming around underneath at 10 o'clock.
I got those two at 2 o'clock.
Watch them, Scotty.
I got my sights on them.
Check that B-17, Chuck. 3 o'clock. Motor's broken. Fighter's 10:30 coming around. Those 10:30 up, a little lower.
Despite the ferocity of the attack, we pressed forward. Our 17 suffered the most savage assault since the war began. We lost 20 bombers on the road to Schweinfurt, but our boys never broke formation. The men of the 1st Bomb Wing delivered 400 tons that day and scored 80 hits on the 2 main ball-bearing plants. Now the main idea was to get home fast. They knew German fighters would be waiting along every second of the 2-hour flight home. They fought their way to Schweinfurt. Now they hoped they could battle their way back to where our fighters would be waiting to help.
Every man who has ever climbed into a plane has helped shrink the earth. Today, in the tradition of the men who fly, we are knocking on the door of the vast reaches of outer space. In just a moment, we'll investigate the traditions these Air Force Academy cadets may fashion in their aerospace world of tomorrow.
Now, once we thought about giving premiums away to people for buying Skippy peanut butter. Of course, those premiums would have to appeal to adults, just the way Skippy itself does. Well, some of the things suggested were around-the-world cruises, fur coats, and sports cars. But finally, we decided that the greatest premium we could possibly give grown-ups is the premium quality of Skippy itself. It's a premium you don't have to save up for. You get it every time you open a jar of Skippy. It's the fact that Skippy peanut butter was created with grown-ups in mind. The stickiness, the indigestibility, well, every one of the things that grown-ups usually don't like about peanut butter are gone from Skippy because of the exclusive, patented way it's made. What's left is the true, exact taste of plump, fresh-roasted peanuts. And that's why we keep saying, if you like peanuts, you'll like Skippy. Skippy peanut butter.
The traditions these young men are building here at the Academy will be hallowed by time. As tomorrow's generals of the Air Force, the greatest adventure of mankind lies before them. For theirs is the space age, and these are the men who will lead the way. It's safe to say some of these cadets will be the first to fashion traditions that are out of this world.
Before man sets foot on our closest neighbor in space, there will be many lunar probes using unmanned missiles. Our first step will be to fire a probe ahead of the moon. Caught by the moon's gravity, it will make a reverse orbit and return to Earth. Television cameras and delicate instruments will reveal most of the moon's secrets before we send a human being on a trip of over 200,000 miles across the sea of space. As a stepping stone to the moon and beyond, manned satellites will be used. Assembled in space, the parts of the satellites will be delivered into orbit by space freighters. Workers taken to the location by a shuttle plane will complete the job. Due to the weightless condition that exists, man will easily handle equipment he couldn't even move on the ground. The man-made satellite will stay in orbit forever unless it's deliberately brought down. As it moves in space, the satellite might be used as a training station for personnel and to extend or increase military reconnaissance with men capable of making evaluations far more searching than ever before possible. Scientifically, it could serve as a telescope viewing platform, free from the curtain of atmosphere astronomers on Earth must endure. Of course, the natural climax is to land men on the moon. Arriving there, the ship may either go into orbit or approach the planet directly. If the direct approach is made, retro rockets will slow our craft down as it lands. There will probably be many trips to the moon, and from there, men of our Air Force will venture even farther into space to other planets in our galaxy. Once we get that far, we'll be on the threshold of a tremendous new age of exploration. Beyond the moon and out to the fringe of infinity shines celestial beachheads beyond counting. In the airlessness of space, small rockets with a minimum thrust will send explorers hurtling along at thousands of miles per hour. Who can say what traditions will be made on the red planet Mars? Well, one thing's sure, the men who go there will bring back the answers to many questions. Are there ruins of long-dead cities on Mars? What are the lines we call canals? Today, nobody knows, but soon the answer will be known around the world. America is a land where free men have made a habit of doing the impossible. Many of those impossible achievements became traditions. From those first flimsy wings half a century ago at Kitty Hawk to the threshold of space, traditions of yesterday and of today are pointing the way for those traditions that will inevitably be born tomorrow, and no dream is out of reach. Well, good night. See you all next week.
Travel arrangements for you asked for are made by TWA, Transworld Airlines. Jetstream, non-stop service coast to coast and overseas. Fly the finest, TWA Jetstream. Send your request to You Asked For It, Box 323, Hollywood 28, California.